The Ulna hEireann is a new political party which reads on its website: Irish patriots, reclaim your heritage now. Join our Christian national movement to halt cultural, economic and social collapse and restore Éire's sovereignty. Your voice matters. The founder of the same, Anthony Casey. Anthony, thank you for your time.
How are you doing, Arthur? I really appreciate you speaking to me today. Much appreciated.
Anthony, first and foremost, tell us, what is the main focus? What is the main vision? Why was this party started? We have a plethora of political parties out there now at the moment. Who are you? What's your vision?
Yeah, okay, so I'm the party president of the hEireann. I have been involved in politics just over, I suppose, a year and a half now. I would say why I think it's important. The hEireann is something that I had thought about for a good while, since late last year. Even though I was part of other parties, this is what I wanted them parties to be called. I think the Christian message is badly needed in society today. I think there's a separation of God from society. And I think that that comes from politics and people in politics, global in politics. And I think it's wrong. So I think to look after our own, I think we need to push back against certain narratives that I think have led people astray in a very, very dark way. So that's why I think deal here and God with Ireland, God is needed with Ireland now. And I think that's the essential message, the best message I can think of pushing.
Tell us a bit more about yourself in terms of, you mentioned briefly you were involved in politics, but how you, I want to paint a picture of you yourself. Often an organisation the old saying is good. Any movement, any initiative is generally as good as the man or the woman leading it. So tell us a bit more about yourself in terms of your passion for this area.
Yeah, well, I suppose, I've seen different industries and met a lot of different people in terms of just since even leaving school, let's say, right? So I'll be 37 very soon. I have 4 years in the construction industry as lift engineer, 11 years logistics. I was in the court service. I've been in the fitness industry. I have a level 8 in business and supply chain management and strength and conditioning. A lot of different, I've mixed with a lot of different people, in different industries, in the office, in the construction site, all of that. So I still hold friends from every little circle, I would think. And I hear common themes of worry. And they might not say it outwardly, and they might be afraid of saying it, but people are worried about the same things essentially. They're afraid of they're shocked at some of the things they see online. They're worried for their kids' futures. It was hard for me not to get involved in politics when I saw free speech being threatened. I seen a never end to inflation and corruption. I have 3 young kids. It hurt me sitting on the couch not doing anything. And I was naive, I suppose, to think I could just walk in, stick my poster up, knock on a few doors. I think the system is a lot more closed than that. And that's a scary thing. I think that I've seen a lot of tears at the door. I reached 7,000 doors in the general election, knocking on doors. I'd say I got five negative reactions. That's being honest. I seen a lot of corruption even at the ballot boxes, and I got disheartened. And it's a type of thing where you can't walk away from it then, because you feel like you're defeatist. You're giving up on something that you should be calling out. I think there's massive amount of corruption and I would say evil going on with on an elite level of politics across the Western world. I stay within it because I think the Irish people deserve something that they can fall into, um, that pushes the right message and grow a community that's positive and what's needed, and getting good heads together. So I think it's all about community and the right message being put out there and calling out some of the evil that I'm talking about.
But we live ultimately in a 21st century Ireland. We need to embrace equality, diversity, and inclusion. This is the message we get continually. Ireland is a very different place than it was perhaps in the 80s or even the 90s or even the early 2000s. So why are you attempting to bring God into politics? I mean, what is the purpose? What's the point in this? I mean, should you not just be leaving God behind and deal with the real issues on the ground?
I would say that the Christian life is the way of the book. And a philosophy would say that as well. They would say essentially the first book was the Bible, and Shakespeare was modeled off that kind of wording as well. And I think them morals from the Old Testament and the Sermon on the Mount are what shaped the Western world. That morality of loving your neighbor and even loving those who persecute you. It's only over the last 20 years that we've pulled God from society. I think that we've been led down a very dangerous road with that because, as a great philosopher once said, you remove God from society, everything is permissible. I think that was Dostoevsky, and that's what you're kind of seeing. I think that you're seeing this kind of world where someone gets murdered in a horrific way, and people are shocked by it, and then they swipe, and that's it. You know, and I think we're losing the culture that they have young people growing up through. And I think the colleges and school system is more turning into an indoctrination camp. I've always seen people say leave God out of these things, leave religion out of these things. I think atheism is a religion. And I think that that religion has brought forth what they like to call the Enlightenment era, of we are gods and we control our morals and we're too sophisticated for these things. When really, I think we're all just cocooning. People are burying their head in the sand. I think there's a massive amount of issues throughout the world. We're not even that replacement rate anymore. We're losing, you mentioned diversity, we're losing logic over diversity. They're pumping more into the funding in Ireland, into diversity than they are in the childcare studies. Um, so I think that we're just people are lost, and I think there's a real nasty agenda behind it. That's the truth, and I think it needs to be spoken about. I'd like a presidential candidate to speak about it more. I'd like it, anyone who has a bigger platform to speak about it more. But until we create a bigger platform, I think it's on us as Christians to call it out.
Okay, let's move on to your policies then, the various aspects of policies. We've got economy, we have environment, we have the different policies. List out your key policy areas that you want to tackle and how are you going to go about doing this?
Yeah. Um. So policies, I guess one of the big things that we had from we had built our we were in a party Ireland first at the start of the year. That got tied up in ELC complications. I'm not going to go too far into that, but we wrote a constitution that was for the indigenous Irish people. And what did that entail, and what did that mean? And I see for so long, firstly, it's important to say that, you know, immigration can work fine. It has worked fine for years. And that nobody is in any way racist in this party whatsoever. I have friends from all different cultures and backgrounds. But the problem is when things become uncontrolled with an agenda that seems to cause suffering to our education system and our hospital system in terms of waiting lists and our housing system, and people be brought in and put above the Irish on council lists and get medical cards that are so hard to get, free transport, all these things. I think it's not, you have to be unapologetic to say, let's start looking after the Irish people here. Who are these 16,000 record homelessness? Well, they're the Irish. Who's being put back? Who can't afford schooling in this country? Well, it's the Irish students because they're not getting free accommodation under any ARP system. They're not getting free travel. They're not. There's no accommodation. I live near Carlow Town. All the accommodation in B&Bs are all gone to the ARP system. They can't stay there, and then if they travel and cost of living, they're sleeping on couches. They're trying to get car insurance. They're not allowed to drive their own car without a qualified driver there. We know that that's become more difficult. Everything seems to be going against pushing our own out the door. And this was the thing that people were most upset about at the doors. Beside the cost of living was their kids were leaving. They had to tell their kids to leave as well, even though they hurt people. But there was no potential good life here. There's no future family life. There's no chance of a mortgage, especially if you're anywhere near a big city. Um, and we can say, you know, Africa for the Africans and things like that. And I know people like to say Ireland for the Irish, and people give out a bit of terminology and all that. We don't want 100% Irish people here. We want logical emigration, but we need to look at if the Irish people are suffering under the cost of living and housing, then we need to put these people first. They're closing their doors because they don't get the likes of Islamic funding that comes through revenue now. They don't get halal mortgages where they don't have to pay financial tax on. These people are being pushed down the council lists now. And it's time to call it out. I think I'd like that website to actually put and promote in every county the Irish businesses that are in that county that are struggling. Here, if you want to promote Irish and support Irish, it's like shop local. And it's not a boycott list, but it's a promotion of Irish businesses for the Irish people. I don't think that's so bad.
Talk to me then about the main problems you see existing in the current system. Well, one could make some questions about the of the opposition party, but nevertheless, we have an opposition party. What are the things that need to be fixed, and how would you go about suggesting that they actually need to be fixed?
I think a lot of us know what route they're bringing Ireland. I think there's a globalist agenda, and I don't think people can really argue with it when you see mass immigration, suffering inflation, all these things. I'd like to be a party that I can also foresee, not just a reactionary party to inflation, things like that, that knows that we need to keep cash alive. That's imperative, and knows that there is a risk of, let's say, a social credit system or a digital ID, and that there's a problem reaction solution being put in place and to safeguard people from that. Um, and I really do think that. I think that the UN sustainability goals is being pushed very, very hard on Ireland. How do you battle against that? And I guess you can create networks. Like, I'd like to tackle something as big as a regime. I think you need three things. You need the people, you need a narrative, and you need the policy. And for me, the people is Sinn Féin, which we spoke about before, which is a grassroots community of people. It's not political, but it's a protective community that link in with each other. The policy being Deal hEireann, and the narrative being shows such as the Irish Column, and that we do on a Sunday night that puts out the other narrative that they're not showing. I think that combination and trying to promote that. We have a lot of Irish Americans who've joined the party. There's actually more American Irish in the party than there is Irish. And they're interested in helping fund something like this get off the ground. That's maybe how you could possibly win this as well. Because that's their identity too, and they hold that close, and we embrace that too. What does it mean to be Irish? Well, the party stands for preserving Irish culture by setting up, like, by having people who speak it and setting up little talks once a week, let's say, and Sinn Féin does that as well for Irish speakers. Likes of the Era Festival, we like to do promote Irish festivals and things like that as well. Whether that be through Sinn Féin, Deal hEireann, we'll be at the March for Jesus, we'll be standing for all these things. It is a slightly different approach to the usual politics and inflation, but I think it's needed. I think a more robust angle is needed if you're willing to take on the establishment, I think, and not just reactionary, but to say, look, this is how I think we're being pushed down the line. This is maybe how we can circumnavigate it.
Okay, but like, it's all well and good talking about these things. You're talking about globalist agenda. I mean, is this not all conspiracy stuff? I mean, this is the stuff we generally hear from these right-wing extremists. I mean, what you're saying is right-wing, it's extremist, it's bigoted, it's hateful. No doubt this is what you'll be told. This is what you'll be accused of in the mainstream media. What will be your counter-argument to all this labels, right-wing, extremist, bigoted, hateful, sensationalist, the neo-Nazi, and so on? So what's going to be a comeback to all this?
I think it's sad how the propaganda for the last 5 or 6 years has really worked on so many people. There was no far right narrative before COVID. And I think that was put there because, in case of any strong um, resistance coming forward to the corruption they were about to roll out, here's a box called the far right. And it doesn't matter if this is an elderly woman who's out on the streets against the government and their policies, that's a far right thug. And we've seen that. If someone People have been raped in this country in the last crime has gone through the roof. I had someone try to push back when I ran the general election. The crime in Kildare, which is my county, is a 20-year high. And I asked the guards about that, and they said, well, if we bring in people in mass numbers, they're saying it in the roundabout words. Me calling it out, the media can put whatever slander they want on it, and people can go along with it. But I think it's becoming clearer and clearer to people, especially in the wake of Charlie Kirk, that there's a division put there in the way of propaganda across the Western world, and it has created a massive hate. And this olive branch that the likes of Charlie Kirk might have done with the way of dialogue and civil dialogue, that these right wing are not as extreme as people think. That maybe they've painted these pictures and pitted people against each other. I think that's becoming more clear. I don't hate anybody, let's say on the left, and I don't even like saying that. But because the focus has to be and not even on any iPass centers or anything like that. The focus has to be on the government who are allowing this globalist regime to rain down. And I think as a Christian, you have to be like that too. You can't be pointing the finger at anyone who calls out, what you're doing is this, that, and the other. And we've all heard the names. I've been in the paper plenty of times because I'm calling this out. And I have, there's so many lies circulated about me as well. And they all are lies. But this is what you'd expect. And I did expect it going in because they have to tear down the reputation of anyone who is gaining a bit of traction. And we are gaining massive traction. It's just when you're outside of the state media and without state funding, your voice gets dampened an awful lot. So this is why I think that our plight has to be brought to the attention of the Americans to also help elevate it. So look, I'm not afraid of the propaganda. In fact, that's why I think the narrative is so important. We need to change the narrative, and that needs to be funded. And our voices need to be louder, and we need to win people back, to win Middle Ireland back by showing them the logic. Like me saying about abortion is atrocity. I really do think that. I think it's horrendous. To normalize something like that is horrendous. I think we've had record number of it. I think they say it's one of the biggest causes of death for humans now is abortion. 28% of Gen Z have been aborted. I think to normalize something like that with sleep around culture that goes hand in hand with the colleges and handing out free condoms in your freshman year, um, and swiping left and Tinder and people are dispensable. I think that's morally bad. And it's great to push God from society because people don't want to face that. They want to do what's comfortable. Um, and I think our morals need to be put back in check. And people are going to hear some uncomfortable truths, and people are going to hate me for it. But that's what we're called to do.
We live in the age where speech needs to be clean, it needs to be acceptable. We live in the age where we have to do and say the right thing, regardless ultimately of what we ourselves truly believe. I'm afraid this is the nature of the beast. So, what makes you different? What makes you stand out? What makes you different? How can people trust that you will actually say what you believe? Give me an example.
A woman, Arthur, is an adult female that has ovaries and genitalia. It's my belief there are two sexes, bar some rare anomalies, and that God is very clear on that too. And I think that we lose sense in pushing anything else to our children. Men and women are different and they're beautiful in their own way, but they complement one another.
Quite a radical answer in this day and age. So, at this point in time, what is your vision for the party for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Give us your short term, medium, and long term vision for the party in a nutshell.
I think what's really important now, there's no elections on the coming up. Well, not that we know of, unless the government collapses, which I don't think. But let's say it's 4 years away. I think the best thing that we can do as Christians is to turn up the likes of the Rally for Jesus, to call things out, to push the Christian message across Ireland as much as possible, but with facts, with abortion stats, with the likes of calling out the indoctrination that's going on in the schools even is so horrendous, to our youth, pushing these ideas on innocent kids. Um, I think that it's important that people realize that, there are religions that are replacing what they think is removing religion from schools. They might be in multicolored flags, or they might be, even Islam has a higher presence in Ireland right now. I think we have to be mindful, even atheism is a religion. Um, I think that the religion that built the Western world, and that I think is evidentially true, is most important that we don't lose sight of that and we don't connect to it, because if we lose track of that and we lose connection to it, then things are permissible, like I said at the start. And I think we go down a very bad road. And I think these are biblical times. And I think that that needs to be called out too. I think people need to know that there is a potential social credit system coming, and that is an open air prison. And they've done this in Birmingham. They're setting this up in Paris. They're doing this in China. People can look, the C40 consortium, and it's all under the guise of climate change and um, getting rid of cash and digital ID. If you flood these countries with people who are unvetted, crime is going to go up. And what better excuse is there to put a more surveillance state in place, or a digital ID that we can track these people down? I think they're way ahead with what their plan is, the globalist agenda, and it needs to be called out. I would like to see people out hunting and fishing and planting spuds again. And I think that's going to be a big push and promotion for our part, um, getting back to the old ways. Because going into your house, working, sticking on Netflix, burying your head in the sand isn't going to fix this, and it's going to cost our children's futures.
Time will tell how your party goes, and ultimately, time will tell how the mainstream media will take you and how they accept you, what kind of image they will paint of you, and more importantly, of course, even still, is what the people of Ireland will take of you. But time will tell. Anthony Casey of the party, DLA Hare, and thank you for your time today.
Arthur, thank you very much. Appreciate it.